Hey fellas, just a heads up, the following clip is extremely long, as you could see, and there is a lot of rambling in here. It is about me really touching on, well, the history of me, and really some topics regarding to mental illness, and yeah, and that's it. So, bear in mind, this may be a difficult video to watch. It turned out to be rather hard for me to make, but if you would rather just get back to the gameplay, I will be uploading another video of Spore soon, where I will be doing my more traditional gameplay and gameplay commentary, but this one is mostly just me talking about life. So enjoy if you do, and otherwise see you next video. Hey folks, Azirstrand here for another video for this Spore Let's Play, playing on our planet Oroke. This time I'm gonna try and talk about something, kind of give you guys an idea of who I am and what I'll be doing here. So first, let's go ahead and get in. Waste no time there. Last time we reached the end of the cell stage and we're ready to develop our first creature. I'm gonna try to make something kind of creative, come up with a basis for the for what this creature is gonna turn into, so that... Oh, hey there. That's not nice. Anyways, let's advance. So we turn solidly carnivore. This is... waste no more time. What I'd like to talk about first is kind of who I am. So, I am kind of... Well, first, the reason I'm doing this YouTube channel is not because I consider myself particularly good at, you know, just talking to people. Not particularly good at running a show, honestly. I mean, I'm not the most social individual on the planet. But that is the reason I am trying to do this Let's Play here, is, for one, to kind of give myself that ability to teach myself, essentially, how to properly handle, you know, talking to people regularly, you know, talking to an audience, I mean. Talk to people plenty enough. And by the way, I'm probably going to ramble a bit on this. Still working on speaking to the point. Anyways, so I've been wanting to get into something regular for a while, you know, a job or something. I'm 24, and by all means, if I were anybody else, I would have at least a decent job by now, probably working as a sales associate or something simple like that, if not better. But as it is, I'm actually disabled, which I wish meant nothing. I feel smart enough, I can handle myself pretty well solving problems, but there's one thing that I have a problem with still, and that is focus. Now, I'm not disabled for having ADD, that's far from the truth, although ADD is the biggest of my problems right now. The fact is that the reason I am disabled is because I actually have a, well, for lack of a better word, mental illness called schizoaffective disorder. Now, that may seem like an intensely private thing to share, but I feel I really want to connect to this audience, so being upfront, open, and honest about this kind of thing, I think it'll help people a bit, because there's lots of confusion about, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, depression, and all these other things that some people, they know exactly what's going on. They have depression, they may have bipolar, they know what this is and how much of a difficulty it is. And some people just can't comprehend it, so, and nothing against them, it's just a difficult thing to understand if you've never experienced it. Lots of people have bundles of energy. They just, anything they want to do, as long as they're not too lazy, they can set to and do it. There are some things that, when your mind is what's working against you, that becomes a difficulty. So, what do I want to do? Well, honestly, I would like to have a creative job. Maybe not as a host to a show or anything, but I've always wanted to be a game designer. I'm not sure that will ever happen, but it's a dream of mine. And I know that's a very common dream nowadays. So many people, they play video games. It's much more popular than it may have been back when I was a kid. And now they just, it's so common for them to say, hey, I love these games, I want to make them. Some of them don't really know what it is they want to do with that. They may come up with an idea now and then and think they just got to share it with the world, but a lot of people who want it really just haven't explored and discovered what it is that they really will want to do. I know that I used to be absolutely spastic about wanting to start a YouTube channel, and I'm glad that I've finally come to and do it. Done it. I hope that's right. But now that I'm in the middle of it, I realize I've got some serious work to do. I find myself rather boring. I hope y'all have a disagreement with me there, but I listen to my voice, and part of it is that inevitable bias where people just don't like their own voice recorded. It's just, there are very few people who listen to their voice and say, now that is hot, or whatever it is they choose to describe it. I have a deep voice, and it's a little crackly. It's not very well exercised. If I'd maybe taken up singing as a kid, I'd have a bit better control of it, but I don't, and that's not the end of the road. I can always catch up. I can always learn these talents and eventually become a better speaker. But, and that's something I hope to do while running this channel. But on to really fleshing out what this disability means. So here's how it all began. Somewhere around 2nd grade for me, I started hearing a voice to a person that wasn't there. Kind of, how some kids have imaginary friends. Something that they conjure up, what they're saying, what they're doing. They, flex their imagination and things happen, and they see them and nobody else does. Imagination's a wonderful thing, and just about every kid has some form of an imaginary friend or an imaginary reality that they like to tinker around with. But for me, this was a little bit out of control. It wasn't a negative experience back then, but I couldn't decide what was being said. I couldn't decide when it was being said, and it was a 24/7 conversation in my head. Not the most fun thing to have going on when you really need to focus, but when you don't have anything to do, it can be kind of cool. And that's what I thought anyways, but I decided I wasn't going to tell anybody about it. So, time goes on, I get accustomed to having someone talking to me literally every minute of every day, and I decide I kind of like it. It's, my new best friend, and eventually my old best friend. But the thing with mental illnesses is they don't necessarily stay the same all the way throughout. As you grow up, sometimes it gets worse, sometimes it gets better, but things change. So, at some point, I started getting bullied by this voice, and it wasn't just one voice anymore. There were, as far as I could tell, two people there. One was the old familiar face, although there was never a face to it. And the other was this new male voice that was kind of condescending and really didn't fit it didn't fit my world experience, so I can't understand why it happened. I've always had a good dad and good male role models around, and just my experience with men was good. There was something honorable and noble to just about every single one I had encounter with in the neighborhood I was in. There weren't bad people, but that was just my narrow experience then. Mostly just to say I didn't have any grounds for feeling this way. Well, that went on for a while, and I started experiencing depression for the first time somewhere in middle school, where I thought at the time that it was situational, and I brought it up every so often to family members saying, I think this is what I'm going through. I was assured that that wasn't the case, but I was the firstborn, and pretty much no one in my family knew how to deal with it. Being the oldest has its disadvantages in that everything you encounter is new to your parents. Anyways, so time goes on again, and things get really bad. I'm having trouble focusing in class, missing homework assignments. I've really lost interest at this point in time in school itself, which is significant for me because before then I absolutely loved it. I loved the reading, and I loved the studies of literature. I loved doing the math sometimes, and sometimes I got lazy. I was never a perfect kid or anywhere near that. But for the most part, I was happy with what was going on in school until that point. Give this guy a little humpback. I think that's cute. He's just got a little button on his back. He's got a hump. I'm gonna probably keep that there. Anyways, lost interest in things. It eventually started losing interest in everything I was doing. I'd been an artist of my own, by my own measure anyways. Drawing every opportunity I had. I got in middle school, I got into writing. And that's the only thing that my depression never took away from me. It became my escape. I had harassing voices in my head. I had a lack of joy in anything I was doing, but one thing I did have was imagination, and I could see the stories unfolding. I could see the characters that I was writing about, and it was a very good experience for me in the midst of a very dark time. So, it was, all in all, kind of still a manageable time. being in middle school. My grades slipped, but I kept myself afloat. That was about the time that, because of my grades, I got grounded for half a year. Couldn't do anything unless I snuck to do it. At the time, our family had just gotten our first computer, and I had gotten really into this awesome old game called Civilization 2. I had the gold edition. It had a level designer. It had the traditional gameplay where you could go through, forge your empire, do all this awesome stuff. But that got taken away from me when my grades slipped, and nobody understood why. I didn't understand why. I was no expert in what was going through me. But I just lost the ability to do what it is I wanted to do and what it is everybody else wanted me to do. I think this creature's, it took me forever to put fins in a hump on this thing, but I don't think I'm going to put any more because I don't need extra weaponry on this dude. I'm going to be going for a green card this time, so let's go ahead and finish that up. But, so, more time goes on, I end up writing a lot. I'd sit there with an old gray, blocky Toshiba laptop, had no battery life, had Windows 95 on it, and it was just... That was my favorite toy, was my old gray Toshiba laptop. Couldn't play games on it, which was probably for the best, because I'm prone to getting lost in video games. But I'd just sit there, open up Microsoft Office 97 or something. It was some odd number, but I'd pop that in, I'd type, and I'd type until, night turned to day, and it was negatively impacting everything else, but it was a very positive experience for me. While I was writing, nothing else really mattered, and I'm sure that other people who found hobbies like that in their youth know exactly what I'm talking about. It is really having that one thing that you can escape to anytime you wish makes a whole world of difference. So, here's our first neighbor. Time goes by again, the depression gets worse, and while my writing suffers a little bit, I still keep up with it. Here's a little trick that I learned. If you kill the alpha after befriending it, everybody's afraid, and you get to go back and get parts from another alpha again, because, by the way, anybody who's new to this, the only parts you get are from skeletons on the ground, the bone piles, and alphas. I think you may get parts from rogues, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Time went by, I was in high school, and things had gotten really bad. My grades were consistently below a D in some areas. Whenever I took a literature class, I did pretty well there. But, all in all, my grades were at an all-time low. And it looked like they were getting worse. So, a lot of people really grew to have this disdain for how I was going through things. Fellow classmates knew I wasn't putting in an effort, and the fact that I was even still in the class was almost offensive, it seemed, to some people. I was in a very competitive school, very good language program, very good math program, decent science program, and our students were known for getting out of high school and being just above average in whatever college they went to. It was that kind of place, and everybody graduated, unless the family that was the family of the kid up and left for some reason or another. It was a private school. It was a primarily Christian school. Well, I say primarily. It was entirely a Christian school. It was hosted by a local community, and if you weren't a member of the community, you couldn't participate in the school. It was very closed in. But I was falling below average, and my parents had no idea what to do. Well, at least my dad didn't. My mom was not the kind to care. She would punish me all she wanted because I wasn't making a good impression on her, but she didn't honestly care. That's a hard thing to go through as a kid, is a mother who really gives you a bad impression on what mothers even are. But nice little dinosaur mouth. But I'm saying but too much. Even though I'm kind of at a standstill, I'm trying to think of what to say next. So I derailed, apparently. My parents had no idea what to do or why I was doing so bad. It was widely viewed by everybody that I was too lazy and too obsessed with video games, because that was the only thing that I did. The only thing I did in public, downstairs in the family room, was hop on the computer and play some Descent or any of the other small games, Jazz Jackrabbit 2, games like that, the ones that were popular at the time. I'd be downstairs doing that. Eventually we got a GameCube, and I obsessed over Metroid Prime. Really good game there. But that's besides the point. I was really disappointing a whole lot of people. And my parents knew nothing to do about it other than to give me more punishments to try and scare me into, well, not scare, but you get the point. They were trying to really force my hand into doing something good so that I'd keep up with everything that really mattered to me. But I was depressed out of my mind, and it really didn't matter to me. If I lost what I was interested in, it really made no difference. I just decided I would find something else, anything else, to fill in the void, and it just set up a bit of bitterness between me and, well, really from me. There was no bitterness towards me. There was a lot of disappointment, but no one was bitter. But I grew bitter. I really didn't like the fact that nothing was going my way, and no one seemed to understand that I was not gaining really any pleasure in the true sense from anything I was doing. It just, nothing satisfied. Let's see what has a good pose. I had plenty of pills left over to do stupid things with. Oh, it seems I'm getting a little bit of lag on this. I'll have to wait until an egg hatches to give them a new alpha. So I'd have pills left over. No one was monitoring my medicine taking, and so I'd have them up in my room, and occasionally I'd just start popping them. Just taking down one after another. And it was just absolutely horrible for me, because it would make me sick, make things even harder to focus on, and I was trying to die and I wasn't succeeding on it, but I wasn't so determined to do anything that I would, down an entire bottle. I'd just sit there and down them, hoping that maybe one pill more would end all of this. So I had still not told anybody that I was hearing voices. It was, at that point, a thing of shame for me. I just couldn't bear to hear how people would react to knowing that I just wasn't right in that way. I knew some of the negative stereotypes around schizophrenics, and by then I kind of figured that's what it was. But I was no doctor. I didn't know for sure. All I knew is that something was not right with me. So, fast forward a little bit more, I kind of had a breakthrough. The superintendent of the school, who had decided to take me under his wing to make sure I graduated, had become like a really close friend to me. Being of a Christian upbringing, a lot of what he ended up doing was taking me in to talk about my difficulties and then praying over them, and it meant something to me at the time. I felt like someone really cared if they were praying for me and not doing so for things that I had no interest in. Sometimes people would pray that I'd stop being so lazy and things like that, and that's the kind of Christianity that I couldn't really cope with. That's dark, just dark, twisted, manipulative. But anyways, so he took an interest, he helped me through it. And at some point, I got kicked out of my house because I had gotten into a fight with my mom. Me and my birth mom never really had a good relationship, and to be perfectly honest, I never had a good relationship with any of the older women in the community where I was at. There was just something twisted going on there. And I'd get in arguments with my mom just over things I had no control over. I can't actually impress this guy. But, I mean, this is not easy to talk about. I'm actually sick today, so I figured it was a good day to talk about something really close, just because I have plenty of time on my hands. Can't do anything else. So I eventually told him about my suicide attempts, and he told my dad. Even though my relationship with my dad was good, I just couldn't bear what he might say if he knew I was attempting suicide. So he ended up telling my dad for me. They brought me to a hospital. I was stripped of any distractions, any really anything to do, but it was for my own good. And that was when the doctors talked to me, I decided my life was at an all-time low, and I'd already confessed to what I thought was the most unforgivable thing. Attempting suicide, giving up on life. From what I understood, that was as bad as you could get. You could, aside from doing harm to others, if you were willing to give up, then you had something seriously wrong with you. It was just messed up of you. But I told the doctors about the voices, and they in turn informed my parents, and Now, as far as my mom was concerned, that just made me crazy, you know. And instead of being sympathetic or caring, there was that condescension of, you know, you're just not as good as us. But, oh, I'm gonna starve to death. But my dad really realized that with this new information, he had to help me in a real way. And so he did. He started talking to me regularly when he'd get back home from work, asking how I was doing, what I'd been doing, really taking an interest in what I did each and every day, and that made a world of difference to me. And so they started putting me on a little bit more effective medicines, things more geared to dealing with the voices, and shortly afterwards, the voices did go away. And they'd come back from time to time, but they always were ready to adjust my medication to make things work out again. But there was, in spite of the medication dealing with the voices, it wasn't dealing with my depression well enough. I was still depressed. I didn't really care about anything at that point. I was happy that my dad had taken a personal interest in me and how I was doing. But it just wasn't enough for me to find a reason. And I reached the end of my high school career. I just barely graduated thanks to being put on a separate curriculum, a different curriculum that was... I didn't get the college preparatory diploma that everybody else in my class got because I didn't work that hard. I didn't achieve that. There were a whole bunch of credits that I fell short on. But what I did get was a high school diploma. It turns out I'd taken enough intensive schooling before then that I had enough credits that I could graduate by the rest of the world's standards. Anyways, I kind of went silent there for a moment. I apologize to you, my viewers. So I graduated, and things started to work out a little bit. I picked back up an interest in meeting new people. I really discovered the uses of the internet. And discovered IRC, started making some new friends, and some people I would have been better off not knowing them. I had some bad relationships that happened, you know, both friendship relationships and more romantic ones, and I was woefully unprepared for handling a romantic relationship. I got into some dark things that I'm not really going to bring up in this video just because I do want this to maintain some level of safe for family thing. And I experimented with my time and came up with some serious dark stuff. But eventually, kind of, my old held Christianity came back, and I kind of decided that my days of quitting were over. I may not be able to achieve what it is I wanted to do, but my days of quitting were over. And I really developed a personal relationship with, the one who I believed saved me. I did believe in the eternal damnation that came from the first sin, the fall of humanity, and I was freed not only from that sin, but from all the sins I'd committed up until that point, and I had a future to look forward to. I had a purpose, and there was somebody with a big plan out there that I could live for. But that didn't really help me with the depression, unfortunately. It may have been enough to keep me from doing anything too particularly stupid, but it wasn't enough for me to really... It wasn't enough for me to pull myself up. I was willing to not throw myself down, but I was unable to pull myself up. So, fast forward, a few more months, really, and I attempted college for the first time. Found an art school a friend recommended to me, and I enrolled. I had no way of getting a scholarship, as my grades had never been good enough for that. But I did have enough money saved up from my father setting aside money for me from when I was a young kid that I could throw it all into paying for starting and, get myself a loan. But ultimately, that was when I discovered that I could not focus well enough to compete in a college environment. I cared. I knew I did. I wasn't giving up. I wasn't giving it, half attention. I was really putting my all into it, and I wasn't getting the grades. What the heck? Oh, hello. Okay, give me a second, guys. It seems like we have a bully on the playground. Leave me alone. Okay, they left me alone. But, where was I? I couldn't focus, I couldn't make the grades, and I ended up pulling out when I found out that there was more than just making grades to being in college. I had to come up with money. The loan was insufficient, and I realized there was no way I was going to be able to pay it off. If I wasn't going to make the grades in school, it wasn't going to be worthwhile. So I dropped out. I'd acquired some software and some books and all, textbooks and all these other things that would ultimately prove useless. I'd paid to be equipped for school, but I couldn't pay tuition. So there was the end of that. I did end up attempting college one more time before I reached the point I am now, and it turned out the same. I was unprepared, and my finances couldn't get in order. But eventually, another rough patch came in my time, and honestly, it wasn't as rough as it could have been. There was a hidden blessing in it, but there was a divorce. My dad and mom, my mom had been just mistreating my entire family, particularly my dad, and it was going nowhere fast. And the community wasn't helping in the matter, as they seemed to side with my mom on the matter, and so he ended up having to leave the community. And even though he'd pumped years and years of his best efforts into making us a new house and really providing me and my siblings an excellent life, my mom kicked him out of the house. And not wanting to really get into too big of a fight over it, he left and gave each of us, his kids, an opportunity to go with him, because he was going to provide for us like he always did. And that was something he didn't want to change. He was always going to take care of his kids. But my siblings, for fear of losing the house, sided with my mom, decided to stay with her, in spite of everything they knew. In spite of how they treated her, leaving the community was just not an option for them, as far as they were concerned. They had friends, they had a life, they had an education to complete, and since you can't really go to that school without being part of the community, they just didn't want that to happen. So I, having graduated, went with my dad, and that became one of the best times of my life, before this current time. My medicine was finally starting to really help out in a major way, and he was providing all the support he could. But so that was a really good thing. The divorce ended up being a blessing for me in particular, but it was a rough time overall, because I had to establish, after how my mom had treated me, that I was not going to talk with her. I was not going to deal with her anymore. And she was rather disrespectful of my wishes there. So I had a lot of drama to deal with, and so things were not easy. And in spite of all the commitment I'd made, all my decisions, that I wasn't going to give up anymore, after a while, things got bad again, and I wound up in the hospital. Nothing had happened, but I knew that I was in a suicidal mindset, and that was unacceptable. I didn't make any attempts, thank goodness. But I knew that I was in a bad way. I'll ban these guys. Kind of don't know why someone decided they were going to put a massive spike between their legs, but okay. It just seems a bit inappropriate. And it seems like that crashed my game, so I may have to redo all this. Oh. I don't remember exiting. But it did save. So, this time in the hospital, I made some friends. I was in there with some other people who were there for different reasons. It was a much better environment than the last hospital I'd been in, and I really picked up art again. I started drawing, and it was a good time. It was a good time. Once I got out of there, that is. They put me on a new medicine that was like a miracle pill for me. It fixed my depression in a way that I'd never imagined. I just had no idea that life could be that positive, could be that good. And so, my character is really hungry. I need to find something to hunt. Anyways, I get sidetracked so easily. I still, in spite of all the good things that have happened, I still have some major ADD. Ooh, butterfly. You know, that kind of thing. But, so I'm blanking here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna take a cut and be right back in a bit. Okay, guys, I'm back, and I'll try to be a little bit more focused this time around. So I think the last thing I was talking about was, well, at least the last thing I got sidetracked onto was that ADD, still a big problem. Part of the reason that I had, you know, the difficulty in the first place talking to you guys. But one misconception. Now, we've got through my life story. Now to what this means for people. What are you going to come away from this with? Well, there are some misconceptions about what it's like to have depression, what it's like for a schizophrenic. How can you trust someone who is detached from reality in that way? Well, fortunately, I'm not in that situation anymore. But one thing to bear in mind when dealing with someone is that who a person is based not on the state of their mind or the state of their physical appearances or that. It is based entirely on the choices they make, the choices they will make, and the choices they have made. You are who you choose to be. And that's something that people out of fear or confusion just don't seem to understand. So, for schizophrenics, schizoaffective, yeah, you occasionally get the one who chooses to listen to really negative voices sometimes, dangerous things. Oh, most people associate schizophrenics with, you know, serial killers or mass murderers. You know, pretty scary stuff. But people don't seem to realize there are people like me out there who have chosen to be who have chosen a path of at least positivity towards others, at least a concern and a care for people other than myself, at least a decision to contest anything I know is wrong just because something or someone says it. So, it's possible that if you meet someone in my situation, they may not be the safest people to be around. But same goes for anybody else. You never know, and you can't know based on what a piece of paper and a doctor's order says about them. But when it comes to depression, there's one thing also to understand, is that while a person is who a person is based on what they do. Sometimes who a person is really suffers from a utter lack of reason for doing anything, utter lack of motivation. It doesn't make the person excused from, responsibility. A person still needs to know, depressed or not, that they have things they must do. There are things that have to be done. Responsibilities that you have to own up to. And there is nothing that exempts you from that. It's important for people to understand what it is you can and cannot do. But it is important for you to know that whatever you can do, you are responsible to try and do. To do your best. And if you fall short, well then that's just what happened. That's how things panned out. There's nothing you could, if there's nothing you could do about it, then there's nothing you could do about it. But if you know that you could have done something, then you need to at least acknowledge that to yourself and know that you need to work harder next time. Need to try harder to better yourself and achieve what it is you know you need to do. And I know as a person I have fallen so far short in so many ways of what I should have done and what I should have achieved. But I also know that it's not over yet, and doing things like this, hosting a show on YouTube, trying to better myself by doing things I'm not good at, and at the same time hopefully helping somebody else who has a difficult time they're going through, some confusion about something, just broadening the human experience in any way that I can. This is about to be the end of my session here. I may break this up into multiple clips, or may have done that already. But bear in mind that a person makes decisions that better them or allow them to fall backwards. But there is always value in a person, and nobody is lost until it's all over. So, if you know somebody maybe going through a rough time, they may need someone to talk to, and that's a common case. I know I wish I had more people to talk to, but if you've got a friend, or you've got a classmate, or somebody you know, they're having a rough time for any reason, offer them a shoulder to lean on, and a hand to hold, and really give yourself that opportunity, because it's all worth it in the end. Well, that's about all I have to say here I'm not sure how many videos this is going to turn out into, but I'm going to go ahead and save the Kiblander and hop out of this, and I hope this helped you guys some. I know I rambled a whole lot, and this may have been, I don't even know how long this video is, but if you want, come back for the next video. Come back and support me in this stream. This is a journey for me, and that is so important that I know how I'm doing. So please do leave a comment below, subscribe if you wish to, and have a nice day regardless. Well,